Welcome to Coffee with Danny and V. I'm V.
And I'm Danny.
And on this show, we talk about all things midlife, perimenopause, and menopause included. And today we want to talk to you about insomnia, because insomnia definitely gets worse in midlife, and you need to know why and what you can do about it. So, I am a confirmed insomniac of about 20 years. And it's only been recently in the last year or two that I have discovered what causes insomnia and what I can do to take control of that. And now I get 7 to 10 hours of sleep every night, and it's glorious. And Danielle, I know you also have issues with waking up in the middle of the night. You're a very light sleeper.
I'm a light sleeper. It's really hard for me to turn my brain off to go to sleep. So I've always considered myself in some ways like that night owl per se. And it's more because I just can't turn my brain off, right? So even when I lay down, it's, okay, what is this happening? Is that happening? And I've found a few ways, making a list. I have to have paper and pen by my bedside so I can make a list. But yeah. Definitely deal with those things.
Mm-hmm. And so what that indicates to me is that you probably have insomnia,
yes.
Like a clinical, definable insomnia. And there are 3 different kinds of insomnia. And you can have one of them or a combination of a couple of them or all of them. So the first one is that you can't fall asleep, right? Danielle said, I can't turn my brain off. And
yep.
And I hear that from women all the time. That was definitely what I used to be like, right? You just can't turn your brain off. You're worried about things. You're thinking about what has to get done the next day, or
what didn't I do?
Yeah, or an interaction you had over the day that you weren't.
You're replaying
with,
it.
Whatever.
I should have said this, and I meant to say this, and do I call that person, or
right?
Do I set it straight? I don't know. There's so many things. Yeah. You know.
And then the second one is, so you can't fall asleep, maybe, but maybe you can fall asleep, but you can't stay asleep, right? And Danielle, you just said you're a night owl. Yeah. You wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it might be.
Well, yeah, and I call that my light sleeping. So, it could be the smallest bit of, sound. I think you even have that to a degree with light, right? So
yes, absolutely.
Those things that seem very minute, wake you up and you can't stay asleep.
Exactly. And then the third one is you fall asleep, you stay asleep, but the quality of the sleep that you're getting is very poor, right? And I think we've all been there, right?
Oh,
we just kind of tossed and turned all night. We weren't necessarily awake, but we weren't necessarily asleep. And my insomnia was definitely a combination of all 3. Right? Couldn't fall asleep. And if I was lucky to fall asleep, I didn't stay asleep. And if I did manage to fall asleep and stay asleep, I wasn't sleeping well. And that was for almost 2 decades of my life that I had that to deal with that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not fun.
No. And, and through the years I've had, I think, variations of that, not to, and I think that's the other thing too, is women don't realize you can be on, so many different scales of insomnia, right, too. Mm-hmm. So for me even, maybe I suffered from one of those most of the time, but the other 2 I would have, at different times, depending on, maybe what was going on or whatever the case was. So you can definitely experience, all 3 of them together, and it doesn't have to be consistent. I think that's the part I'm getting to is, it doesn't have to be consistently. It's not always, I always don't sleep well or can't sleep through the night or, whatever it is. It can be a combination of those things. Mm-hmm. And I think also us as women, for us, insomnia may feel like a label sometimes or a disease. The same thing that I think a lot of women suffer with menopause, even with the definition of menopause or the word menopause is that you're labeling it, right? Or, now all of a sudden it's a disease, which menopause is not. And I think they fear the same thing with insomnia. They don't want to label themselves as an insomniac or anything like that, or having insomnia per se. It's just, and I've done this for years too. I'm a light sleeper. I'm a night owl. I give it a different one that to me isn't, saying that something's wrong with me. And I think that's the thing we do also need to get past, is realizing that these are all forms of insomnia, and there's ways to help us, even if what we want to call it is being a night owl or a late sleeper.
Right. Okay, so the reason that insomnia seems to get worse as you get older, it does. It's not all in your head, right? It actually does get worse, especially for women going into perimenopause, and here's why. It's got to do with estrogen. Are you sick of me saying that yet? It all comes down to estrogen. But remember, I said estrogen is responsible for regulating so many of your body's processes. And what estrogen regulates are your 3 sleep hormones as well. So the production of Gaba, the production of serotonin, and the one that we've all heard about, melatonin, right? Those 3 things are sleep hormones. And you must have all 3 in the right combinations at the right times of day and night in order to fall asleep, stay asleep, and get good quality sleep. So if your estrogen is declining, of course you're going to have trouble producing those 3 sleep hormones, because your estrogen is directly related and linked to causing those chemicals to be created in your body. So not all in your head. So let's talk a little bit about what GABA, serotonin, and melatonin do for you in the sleep process, because I think it's important to understand what's happening in your body. So the first thing we want to talk about is GABA, right? It is the thing that helps calm your mind and calm your heart rate. So GABA is important in that respect. Serotonin also helps calm your mind, and it also does this thing called building up of sleep pressure. So homeostatic sleep pressure is when you're going throughout your day, right? Serotonin will help tell your body that you're sleepy, just a little bit, right? In the early afternoon or whatever. And the sleep pressure builds up gradually over the course of the day so that you have enough sleep pressure in the evening to fall asleep. And then melatonin is just kind of a sleep hormone on its, like a sleep hormone on steroids. Is that weird to say? But it does a lot of things. Melatonin helps regulate your internal clock, so your circadian rhythms. It also is responsible for regulating body temperature, assists in that process. It helps assist in calming your brain down, telling you that it's time to sleep, and making you stay asleep. So these 3 sleep hormones are critical for different parts of the sleep process. And it's not just when you go to bed at night and when you're sleeping. You need to have these sleep processes happening through the entire circadian rhythm, the entire 24-hour cycle, right? So when your estrogen starts to fluctuate and decline, these 3 sleep hormones do the same thing. So you need to pay attention to your estrogen levels and the kinds of things that can trigger insomnia, right? And we've all heard about those kinds of things. Don't drink caffeine before you go to bed, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of things that can trigger these.
Yeah, I think there's even too, some of the ones that I think are coming out more recently is paying attention to things like screen time before you go to bed. And even, as you develop these things like night owl habits, you're messing up your circadian rhythm, which is ultimately your body saying, okay, it's time to sleep and it's time to wake up. And it typically falls with the patterns of the sun. So when the sun comes up, it's time to wake up. But you can totally throw that off, by the habits that you start creating and, diving into that whole mindset that I am a night owl and leaning into that, Now, don't get me wrong, there's professions that, where
you need to be,
so, and I think that's also where, we'll go into finding, the right solution. Those types of scenarios need different solutions, but.
Yeah. The other things that can trigger insomnia are stress. And oh man, stress is responsible for triggering a lot of things. But if you can find ways to de-stress your mind and your body, you're going to increase the serotonin production by doing those things. So, going for a walk is a good idea. Minding what you eat is important. Watching what you put in your body, not just before you go to bed in the hours leading up to it, but through the entire day,
yeah.
right? If you can eat foods that assist your microbiome, you knew we were going to bring it up.
Yeah, it has such a big role, even in your sleep, and
absolutely,
your microbiome.
Yep. So if you can eat the right kinds of foods to help your microbiome be as healthy and as productive as possible, so that your estrogen levels stay. Remember, we talk about happy little beach waves instead of roller coaster spikes. That's going to help impact your sleep habits in a positive way as well. The other thing I think people should be aware of is, a lot of folks drink wine or alcohol in preparation to go to sleep. And that can have some negative unintended consequences that we didn't know about, right? And chief among them is night sweats. So if you're struggling with hot flashes and night sweats, alcohol can be a really big trigger of those things. So if you can reduce your alcohol consumption in such a way to make sure that what you're drinking before you go to bed is maybe more water, or like herbal tea or something like that.
Something like that has those calming kind of things. I think the other thing with alcohol, and if a lot of people that do drink it would really start paying attention to what their body's doing and telling them, which is the whole thing about paying attention to triggers, right? Is you're noticing, okay, when I do this happens. Sometimes a lot of women will say, well, it helps me fall asleep. But I have seen through a lot of women, when they actually pay attention to this, and even with myself, is it may make me sleepy at first, but I don't get good quality of sleep because it actually induces that whole light sleepy, my light sleep, and I wake up easier once those kind of effects from the alcohol wear off. So it may make you feel really tired, like a glass of red wine. A lot of people say, when I have red wine, I feel really sleepy and it helps me go to sleep. But a lot of women, when they actually start paying attention to it, will see that it actually interrupts the quality of sleep, the depth of their sleep as they continue through the night.
So knowing that estrogen is so impactful on the process of falling asleep and going to sleep, because it impacts these 3 other sleep hormones. I think that it's important for women to do a couple of things. One is to pay attention to their estrogen levels, understand when they're fluctuating, and try to eat phytoestrogens or take supplements with phytoestrogens. Mind your microbiome. Take a probiotic that is specifically designed to help prop up your estrogen deconjugation, which is what MenoFit and MenoGlow do, and that's why we designed them that way. But take something that's going to help you address your estrogen levels, not just on the surface, right?
Yeah.
And don't rely on melatonin.
Yeah.
Find a sleep aid that will address serotonin, Gaba, and melatonin, because you need all 3 in order to fall asleep, stay asleep, and get good quality sleep. That's why we formulated Well Rested the way we did, right?
Yeah.
And I can tell you, it works for me. Because I get to sleep 7-10 hours a night now, and it's fantastic. But that's what you need to do. You need to mind your triggers, eat properly, get some exercise, boost those serotonin levels, do things that you enjoy and will help you de-stress, address your microbiome, address your estrogen levels, and I think you'll be really pleased at how well you start sleeping again.
Yep, I love it.
All right. From a former insomniac and a light sleeper to you, we hope you get a handle on your insomnia real soon if it's bothering you, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.